Fame used to sell fantasy. Now it mostly sells overhead. This is brand damage. There was a time when celebrity branding worked almost automatically. And if you are old enough, as I am, to remember the late 90s and early 2000s in any meaningful way, you know exactly what I mean. Every mall in America smelled like celebrity perfume. Every department store had some frosted bottle with a famous woman's name on it. There were licensed handbags, licensed shoes, licensed makeup, licensed nonsense of every possible variety. You could not walk 10 feet without some famous person trying to sell you a feeling in aerosol form. And the thing is, it worked. Not because all of those products were great, a lot of them were not. Some of them were hideous. Some of them smelled like sugar alcohol and divorce court. But that almost didn't matter. Back then, people were not really buying quality. They were buying proximity. They were buying access, fantasy, a tiny little piece of glamour they could take home in a shopping bag from Macy's. And that's what I want to talk about in this episode of Brand Damage. Not just why celebrity brands used to work, but why so many of them now feel dead on arrival. Because celebrity commerce did not exactly disappear, it just split into two very different categories. There is still one form of celebrity selling that works extremely well. And then there is the other form, the one where a rich and overexposed person with six houses and a content deal and a curated organic pantry decides what the public really wants is to spend $65 on a candle, a bottle of tequila, or some aggressively beige lifestyle product that exists mostly to support their own self concept. That category is in trouble. And frankly, it should be. Back in the 90s and 2000s, celebrity still had mystique. It was more centralized, more controlled, more glamorous. You saw these people in magazines, on red carpets, on television, in music videos, in paparazzi shots. They still felt far away, larger than life. You did not have direct access to them every 5 seconds, and they were not all constantly live streaming their kitchen islands and suspiciously expensive morning routines into your phone. That distance mattered because the distance was the product. When somebody bought a celebrity fragrance in 2003, they were not conducting a sober analysis of scent profile, ingredient quality, and long term wear. They were buying JLo adjacentness, Britney adjacentness, Paris Hilton adjacentness. They were buying an emotional hallucination that maybe for a brief moment, if they sprayed enough of this stuff on their neck, they too could feel expensive and looked at and glamorous and slightly above the mortal plane. Celebrity at that time still had enough aura to carry mediocre products across the finish line. It was fantasy shopping, and the products themselves were often priced right for that. Not exactly cheap, but accessible enough that normal people could still indulge in the little illusion. A bottle of perfume was not an entire lifestyle buy in, it was a fantasy purchase. Low stakes proximity product. That matters. A lot of what has changed since then is not just celebrity culture, it's also the economic and emotional cost of buying into celebrity at all. We are now in a culture where celebrities are not scarce, they are constant. We know too much about them, we see too much of them. They are overexposed, over monetized, over explained, and frequently extremely irritating. And the internet has flattened the whole thing to the point that being famous no longer automatically means being aspirational. Sometimes it just means being wealthy in public, and those are not the same thing. People are much less willing now to underwrite a celebrity's seventh revenue stream just because they have a face people recognize, especially in an economy where everyone is paying for groceries, childcare, rent, insurance, and whatever else is currently trying to kill us financially. The public mood has shifted. What once felt glamorous can now feel insulting. And nowhere is that clearer. Then the evolution from celebrity perfume to celebrity tequila. Because that is really what happened. First, it was gross perfume, then suddenly everybody had a tequila brand. And not just tequila, skincare, supplements, candles, canned cocktails, wellness gummies, home goods, clean beauty, lifestyle products, hostessing goods, artisanal pantry nonsense. Every single famous person with a pulse and a team now seems to believe that what the public wants most is to subsidize their founder era. And that is where things start to collapse. The problem is not celebrity attached to products, full stop. The problem is a very specific kind of celebrity commerce, the kind that assumes fame itself is still enough to generate desire. It often is not. And this is where I want to make a distinction because this episode is not just LOL, celebrity brands are annoying. Luxury ambassador deals still work. In fact, they work really well. Why? Because in those cases, the celebrity is not usually being asked to carry the whole business on the strength of their personal mythology. The brand already exists. The fantasy already exists. The product already has an identity. The celebrity is there to translate the vibe. That is a huge difference. Think about fragrance ads for a second. Fragrance is the perfect category for this because the ad has to sell you something you cannot smell. You can't interact with it the way that you interact with it when you own it. So everything in the ad is symbolic. The clothes, the lighting, the setting, the music, the body language, the color grading, the general emotional temperature of the whole thing. And the celebrity becomes a kind of living shorthand for the fantasy. Johnny Depp doing Dior Sauvage, and yes, that entire campaign is ridiculous and a little bit unhinged, but it is legible. Rugged, dusty, rough-edged, masculine mystique. You know what fantasy they're trying to sell. Natalie Portman doing Miss Dior. Luminous, feminine, romantic, polished. Again, legible. Robert Pattinson in luxury campaigns also for Dior. Detached, elegant, slightly strange, expensive in a way that feels haunted but moisturized. It works. The celebrity is not the product. The celebrity is the mood board. That's why George Clooney selling Nespresso works in a way that George Clooney selling tequila does not really stick. And that example is actually perfect because I could not tell you off the top of my head the name of George Clooney's tequila brand, and I worked in the liquor industry for most of my career. That alone should tell you something. But George Clooney in Nespresso commercials, that makes complete sense. Why? Because Nespresso already knows what fantasy it's selling. It's not really selling coffee, not in the deepest sense. It's selling premium convenience, boutique ritual, tiny capsules of European self regard. It is a glorified Keurig for rich people and aspiring rich people. You go into an espresso boutique and they hand you samples and ask you what notes you detect as though you're tasting wine instead of making weekday caffeine in a machine on your kitchen counter. It is theater. I know because I have one of these things and I go to the boutique. And Clooney fits that theater perfectly. He's handsome, famous, expensive feeling, but not too try hard. There's a little irony to him, a little charm, a little self awareness. He can bumble around in a coffee ad with beautiful women stealing his cup of coffee, and it doesn't feel offensive. It feels like he's there to help narrate the fantasy, not demand that you finance his personal identity crisis. That is a huge difference. A good ambassador says, "This is the mood." A bad celebrity founder brand says, "This is my seventh revenue stream." Luxury still works when the celebrity serves the fantasy. It starts to fail when the fantasy is expected to serve the celebrity, and that distinction explains a lot. It also explains why someone like Jennifer Lopez can still work so well as a brand ambassador even when her current actual output is not dominating culture in the way it did 20 years ago. I can't remember the last time she put out an album or a movie. It's been like a century, but she is still rolling in the brand ambassador deals because at this point, she's less current artist with a hot new era and more durable visual shorthand for glamour. She looks expensive. She looks polished. She looks somehow unchanged by time or physics or ordinary biology. She has become a symbol more than a project, and maybe also a vampire. Brands use her when they want to feel alive again. And honestly, it works. Coach is a great example of this. Coach has had a fascinating life cycle as a brand, and I say this as someone who has always liked Coach, even when it was not especially cool. But part of their successful revitalization strategy involved tapping people like Lo, who already read as luxury, visibility, vitality, and expensive femininity. That is not the same thing as asking the public to buy Jennifer Lopez's artisanal jam startup because she's famous, which she doesn't have one, but it's an example. And to be clear, celebrity brands are not completely dead, but they are a dying breed. Lazy celebrity brands specifically are dead and buried. That's the distinction because there are absolutely celebrity brands that still work, and they tend to work for very specific reasons. Goop. Goop works because it never really fought the ridicule, it absorbed it. The absurdity became part of the texture of the brand. They're not out here pretending no one notices how insane some of it sounds. The vagina candle became the point. The elitism, the weirdness, the faint sense that Gwyneth Paltrow might actually be running a beautifully lit cult for women with Erewhon level disposable income. That is all part of the appeal. Goop understood that if people were going to laugh, they might as well laugh while shopping. Skims works for a different reason. It stopped feeling like Kim Kardashian merch and started feeling like an actual product ecosystem. The quality is good, the influencer marketing is strong, the collaborations are smart, and the brand got big enough that a lot of people engage with it without thinking too hard about Kim herself. And also, let's just be honest, body aspiration still prints money. Kim is associated with a very specific silhouette, and a lot of women may not want her exact life, but they would absolutely like a snatched waist. That's a durable market. Fenty Beauty is probably the clearest example of a celebrity brand succeeding because it solved a real problem. Rihanna had the public goodwill, yes, but more importantly, she had obvious founder credibility. People believed she actually cared about makeup, actually understood the category, and actually wanted to build something good. Then she launched with foundation shades that addressed a gap the beauty industry had neglected for years, especially for darker complexions. That wasn't just branding, that was product relevance. Beautiful by Drew works because Drew Barrymore is likable and the brand reflects that. The products are pretty in a category that is usually ugly, but the brand doesn't feel like an ego project. She didn't build some giant shrine to Drewness. She built cheerful, attractive kitchen products that people genuinely enjoy having in their homes. It feels warm. It feels useful. It doesn't feel extractive. And honestly, Paris Hilton's Walmart kitchen line is one of my favorite examples of this done correctly. It is not pretending to be serious design criticism. It is pure dopamine design. Pink appliances, heart shaped pans, Barbie dream kitchen energy. And there is a real audience for that. Women will absolutely buy a whole kitchen setup if it looks like a Y2K fantasy in hot pink. And Paris herself has weirdly become more likable over time, especially once people realized that the ditzy blonde thing was at least in part a persona. That helped. The brand feels fun, self aware, and complete enough to actually live in. So the issue is not that celebrity brands can't work anymore, it's that they only work now when there is something underneath the fame, a real product, a real aesthetic, a real use case, a real founder fit. or at the very least, enough self awareness to not insult the audience. Celebrity brands, as a whole, are not dead, but lazy celebrity brands are dead. So then we get to the celebrities who completely miss this distinction, the ones who mistake themselves for the fantasy. This is where Meghan Markle enters the chat. Now, Meghan is not the full subject of this episode, obviously. Meghan gets her own episode because there is simply too much there. The woman is a renewable resource of content. She stays putting herself into the press and trying one more relaunch, so by the time we get there, there will probably be fresh material anyway. But she is the perfect late episode example of the broader problem because Meghan is branding like it's 2004. She appears to believe that title plus aesthetics plus visibility still equals aspiration. So what do we get? We get the edible flowers, the jars, the soft California domesticity, the Montecito hostessing fantasy, the cooking adjacent lifestyle show where food is plated and arranged and stroked more than it is actually cooked or eaten. We get the whole linen and light performance of aristocratic serenity as though the public is just waiting to be let into this world. And the issue is not that the world itself is impossible. That kind of aesthetic can work. That kind of lifestyle branding can work. Even titled women in that sort of lane can work and do. She's not the only one. The problem is that the audience has to actually want to enter the fantasy. And with Meghan, too many people do not. Because she's not entering this category as some neutral vessel of elegance and calm. She is entering it carrying years of baggage, grievance, overexposure, contradiction, endless explanation, very public family warfare, and a kind of aggressively managed image architecture that the audience can feel with their skin. So when she tries to sell soft, domestic aspiration, too many people's first reaction is not, oh, how lovely. It is, why are you trying to sell me this? That is fatal. Lifestyle branding requires voluntary surrender. The audience has to feel willing to admire you a little, or at least willing to believe in the emotional coherence of the world you're presenting. And with Meghan, that premise is broken. She is branding like her life is self evidently aspirational. The audience is not consenting to that premise. And that is really the broader problem now with celebrity brands. They are failing not because celebrity stopped mattering, but because the kind of aspiration celebrity used to sell has collapsed. Back then, you could buy a perfume because the celebrity seemed like access to another world. Now, a lot of celebrity products feel like a rich person standing in front of a mood board asking you to fund their self image. That does not mean all celebrity commerce is dead. It means the rules changed. If a celebrity has actual taste, a believable role, a product that is genuinely good, a category that makes sense, a brand identity bigger than themselves, or enough self awareness not to look insulting, then yes, it can still work. But if the whole thing rests on, I am famous, therefore surely you want this candle, this tequila, this serum, this vaguely spiritual hostessing object, that's where it starts to die. Celebrity used to sell access. Now it often just signals appetite. The old celebrity brand said, come a little closer. The new failed celebrity brand says, give me more. And that is why so many of them are dead on arrival. I'm Krystina Repucci, and this is Brand Damage. Until next time.